This is Dan and Lexi from Dan Schultz Outdoors, reminding you to keep the adventures alive.
Hey y'all, I'm Johnny.
And I'm Colleen. And we're the Keel Quest. And we want you to keep the adventures alive. Cheers!
Hey, this is Darren from Ride Paddle Repeat, encouraging you to keep the adventures alive.
This is David from Beachley Ironworks saying keep the adventures alive.
Hey, Kevin with an A here. Keep the adventure alive.
Hi, I'm Dan May. Keep the adventures alive.
Hi, I'm Kevin Collin, the Happy Camper. Remember, keep the adventures alive. Awesome!
Woo, buddy! Shug here! Keep the adventures alive. I am.
Ethan here, the Avid Outdoorsy Guy, reminding you to keep the adventures alive.
We're John and Aaron.
Keep the adventures alive.
Hey everyone, it's Kylan from Lure of the North, and I encourage you to keep the adventures alive.
This is Sky North telling you, keep the adventures alive. And now on with the show.
Well, hello and happy Tuesday evening, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of CANOEHOUND'S Outdoor Adventure Show, a show that brings you a lot closer to the great outdoors. My name is Dennis, also known as CANOEHOUND, and if this is your first time tuning in tonight, well, thank you very much for joining us. We have a very interesting topic tonight about where bushcraft and preparedness meet. Going to be a fun topic, especially in light of all that is going on in the world today. You know what? We're going to get started as we usually do here with a few announcements and a little bit of news, and then we will be introducing our guests who are patiently waiting in the basement or in the green room, as I like to call it, and we will have them up in a few short minutes here. Let's see here. Let's start by acknowledging our sponsors for tonight's show. As usual, we have our good friends over at Algonquin Outfitters. They are located at 4 strategic points around Algonquin Park. If you're ever going up north to Algonquin or passing through the area, be sure to stop in one of their 4 locations and get yourself all supplied up, maybe get some information. And if you have to, you could always rent gear from them as well. So that's Algonquin Outfitters. One of my favorite locations is the Huntsville store because it's so centralized. Whenever I'm passing through that area, I like to stop in and say hi to the boys and girls that are working there and check out some of the good gear they have there. Also, I'd like to acknowledge our good friends over at Kid Products, makers of the Kid Twig Stove and Reflector Oven. Great products for the backcountry, and you know what? Proudly made right here in Ontario. So it's a great little thing. You'd be supporting a small business venture by picking up any of their products and using them. And believe me, if you use them, you're going to love them. Our good friends over at Hunter and Harris Paddles. handcrafted canoe paddles. You know what? They make a piece of art that you're going to have a hard time dipping in the water for the first time, but once you do, you're going to make sure you're dipping that thing in often, because they're beautifully handcrafted and they will move your canoe or your vessel through the water like you would not believe. So by all means, check them out. And last but not least, celebrating over 50 years in business and putting people on water for that long is Novacraft Canoes. You know what? If you've ever paddled a Novacraft canoe, you know you're paddling a quality canoe, and they're all great. All their great body styles and stuff like that, all made to suit your particular paddling needs. So you can find all of our sponsors and links to their websites in the description below. Be sure you check that out, and you'll be glad you did. And you know what? Support those that support us. I don't know if any of you caught last week's show, but last week we had our 100th episode of Canoe Hounds Outdoor Adventure Show, and from the feedback I've had, it was a super fun evening. You know what? We went into super overtime. The show was over 3 hours and 40 minutes long, but you know what? It was justified, because we had plenty of past guests on the show, talked about what they got coming up, just updates about their channels and stuff like that. And we also had our 4 big sponsors actually gave up some really great prizes. And then we had a few other prizes come in from Canoe the North and Kevin Ride over at Kevin Outdoors, and one of his backcountry eat books. And we had 11 different winners. And if you weren't aware of who the winners were, you can go onto our Facebook page at Canoe Hounds Outdoor Adventure Show, and you will find out exactly who the winners were. They've all been emailed and notified of their prizes. Many of the prizes have already been shipped out. So congratulations if you were a winner. Thank you to all of you who participated. Probably the largest participation of actual entries that we've had for any show and any giveaway we've done. We had over 180 entries. So that was awesome. Thank you very much to everybody that participated, to all of you who congratulated us on the 100th episode. You know what? It's been a lot of fun, and now we're trudging on and see if we can get another 100 episodes under our belt, right? So let's keep going with this. Let's have a good time. Let's keep occupying these Tuesdays until the end of this season, and we'll carry on again the following season in the fall. So let's run with it. Anyways, a little bit of upcoming news. Not this weekend, April 29th to the 31st is the Toronto Outdoor Adventure Show. For those of you that might be in the area and maybe thinking about coming out to the show, you know what? I will be presenting on Saturday from 12 noon till about 12:45, and I'll be doing a presentation. I'll be interviewing a couple of Canadian paddling legends, being Kevin Callan and Hap Wilson. So if you happen to be at the show, try and make a plan. Come on out and watch the presentation. And if you can't make the show, or even during or after the show, I will be hanging out all day at the Kid Products booth, which is going to be very close to the stage, which is called the which show is it here? It's the Adventures in Paddling stage, yes, and that's on the main floor in the main hall that the Toronto Outdoor Adventure Show is in. So I'm looking really forward to that. That will be my very first live in front of a studio audience episode of Canoe Hounds Outdoor Adventure Show. I'm going to try to bring it live. I'm going to try and live stream it to see if I can work that out, but I don't think I will be able to, because I'm told that there's no internet within that area unless I could tether it to a phone or something. But if not, I will be recording it and I will post it for others to see at a later time. So keep an eye open for that. Also, if anybody is coming to the show and you know what, maybe you want to get some Canoe Hound Adventures swag, I'll be selling some Canoe Hound Adventures swag at the show. I'll be having some baseball caps. We'll have some our collection of patches available there, and of course we'll have a few. I think I got a few of these to sell off as well, which are Canoe Hound Adventures mugs, coffee mugs, which are really nice. Mine is full of chaga tonight. Cheers, everybody! And you know what? It's a good opportunity because you get to save on the shipping and save a few bucks, and you get some really good looking swag. We got some different varieties, colors, hats, and stuff like that. So, yeah. Enough of that stuff, right? Okay, so one couple last things here before we get on to our topic tonight. If you want any more information on upcoming shows, feel free to check us out at Canoe Hounds Outdoor Adventure Show on Facebook. I already mentioned that. And if you have any ideas for shows or upcoming or shows, topics, or guests, please drop me an email at canoehound@gmail.com. I would love to hear ideas of who you'd like to see on the show. And for tonight, if you have any questions for myself or my guests, please do. And over there in the chat, drop me a question. But put the word question in capital letters beforehand so I know it's a question. And I'll try my hardest to get it up on screen. So without further ado, let's get into tonight's topic and guests. As I mentioned at the top of the show, in light of events that are going on right now around the world, I thought I'd bring you a show that deals with preparing and how bushcraft skills or our backcountry skills kind of cross. They meet. A lot of the gear that we would use for that type of thing is stuff that we would use if pardon the expression, if the shit hit the fan, right? So we're gonna try and do a crossover. I have a couple of fellas here that I met at the Toronto Sportsman Show about a month ago. And we had a pretty lengthy conversation. I thought this would be a great topic to bring up. So our first guest has he served over 20 years in the Canadian Federal Public Service. He served with the Canadian Border Services Agency, Transport Canada Security and Emergency Preparedness in Marine and Aviation Security, Training and Liaison. He also served the Canadian Armed Forces Reserve in the Infantry, Intelligence, and the Military Police since 1998. He's the president and training director of True North Tradecraft Limited, specializing in training relating to personal security, counter custody, covert methods, and entry and disaster preparedness. Please welcome to the live stream. We have Boris Milinkovich.
Yeah, right on.
Oh, wow, man. Tripped my tongue over that one, right? That's probably one of the longest intros I've ever had to read. You know that, right? How you been, Boris?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Awesome. Dealing with Toronto traffic, but otherwise, you know how it goes. Pretty good.
Yeah, I'm for everybody that wonders what he means by Toronto traffic, he got in here just under the wire tonight. So that's good. And we got a good connection, so we're looking good.
Outstanding.
Awesome. Our next panelist is the director and instructor at WSC Survival School Incorporated. He offers training programs and camps specializing in survival and outdoor pursuits. He's a published author and a consultant in survival TV reality series industry. And he's a keynote speaker and at adventure shows. Please welcome to the live stream, David Arama. David, how you doing?
How you doing there, guys?
Good stuff. Good stuff. You know what, David, as you can see, being a guy that's into bushcraft and preparedness and stuff like that, he had a really bad connection at home on two of his different horses, but he's a very resourceful fella, so he's coming to us live from his car. Good stuff. So if he freezes up from time to time, bear with him, people. He's gone to great lengths to be able to join us tonight. So, gentlemen, thanks very much for joining on this topic. I'm going to start with Boris. Boris, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you bring to the table here.
So I guess you gave me a pretty good intro right there. So I guess, my background's pretty varied as far as these sorts of pursuits. Like you mentioned, been in the military as a reservist for a fairly long time in different trades, government service and enforcement and oversight and emergency preparedness, national security stuff. But then in line with all those things has been kind of my real passion, which is what I'm teaching now, Tradecraft, and that's more of the personal and physical security realms. Along with the personal disaster preparedness. So over many years, I was interested in this sort of stuff, but there is no real outlet within Canada that was offering this kind of training or this kind of insight. And so I started going outside of Canada to seek out experts in these fields and to train with them. And after a decade of kind of leaving and doing this sort of thing, I was supported by some of those mentors that became friends in starting up kind of my own thing here. And so True North Tradecraft was born as a kind of labor of love, but has now turned into an actual thing. So we focus on three things. One, disaster preparedness. So looking at, from an urban perspective, generally, how to be prepared for run-of-the-mill things, kind of like winter storms, power outages, floods, that sort of thing, so that it doesn't have to be complex, but that we can have people better prepared to deal with unknown eventualities. Then we deal with physical security. So I teach covert entry. So that's like lock picking, lock bypassing, physical security assessment, so that people can assess their situation from a physical security standpoint and be able to make informed decisions on how to best protect themselves, and understanding what the flaws are in their protection scheme and in their physical security realm. And then third, we have the personal security side of things. So that's using kind of traditional security tradecraft to be able to identify problems and malintent before it affects you, to be able to not be there, so ideally avoidance. We teach combatives, so when someone is forcing you into a violent confrontation, that you can actually cause damage to that person and extricate yourself from the situation. And then we look at what happens after. So things like counter custody. So what happens if you are the victim of a home invasion or an abduction attempt, having the best possible means of self-rescue from that situation. So teaching people how to get out of common restraints, so duct tape, zip ties, handcuffs, rope, and then changing those scenarios. So what happens when you're tied up to somebody else, or when the situation is you're in the trunk of a car, or what have you, and building upon those so that you understand the mechanisms, how to exploit their weaknesses, what tools to use, how to fashion tools from everyday items and to use your environment. So basically dynamic problem solving under pressure. And those are the things that we do and the things that we teach. So we're looking at instilling mindset, capacity, and capability to people to expect to self-rescue from bad situations and have the means to do so.
Very cool. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have David here, who you have worked with, and I believe you're an instructor with his Bushcraft school as well, are you not?
Yeah, David got me started really into all the everything on the kind of bushcraft and wilderness survival stuff. I was one of his students at Humber College and did the outdoor education certificate program, wilderness survival, and then I supported several of his events kind of over the years and stuff like that. And has always been so supportive of everything that I've been doing. And the baseline for a lot of this stuff that I've pursued has been directly because of what David has taught me. And a lot of the wilderness survival mechanisms and priorities and mindset are like we're going to get into later, but they're very transferable into the stuff that I'm doing. And without having that solid foundation in being able to take care of myself in an environment, I would be remiss in saying that I wouldn't be as good as I am or where I am without that starting point, right? Because the foundation was incredibly solid, and anybody looking to start down this path of personal preparedness or building skill sets would be hard pressed to find a better starting point than learning wilderness skills from David.
Cool. So with that being said, David, just so you know, I keep hitting your mute button just because we got a bit of an echoey thing going on there. So I promise to unmute you as I see your lips moving, right? But so David, tell us a bit about what you have, and then we're going to get into talking about how the bushcraft and the preparedness things cross over. So tell us a bit about yourself and what you do, David.
Yeah, well, I've been a survival instructor for about 40 years, and I actually grew up in the city, and I got to tell Boris, if you can survive in Toronto, you can survive anywhere. It's actually a lot easier surviving out in the wilderness. But anyway, my company, WSC Survival School, and also I have a lodge called Marble Lake Lodge and a off-grid 340 acres retreat where we run some serious programs there. We offer wilderness survival, wilderness safety, and a lot of adventure programs that we just go out and have fun, because that's what it's all about too, not just always being serious, but enjoying the canoeing and hiking and winter camping. But then I delve into prepping but maybe a little bit from a different angle than Boris has. I don't get involved in the urban survival or tactical or self-defense. But I got to say this much, Boris, I do have a nuclear bomb shelter with 5 years supply of food, an underground well, and all manner of backup solar and battery inverter packs and generators and wind. And yeah, so I don't know, maybe we'll have to get together if something happens. So
but have you stocked 5 years of maple syrup?
But that's my background, and we recently published a book which we sold before the pandemic struck. We sold this book, 501 Survival Skills That Could Save Your Life in Any Kind of Situation.
Can you hold that up again? Hold that up to the screen again? Can you hold that up to the screen again so people can see your book?
Oh, there we go. Some shameless publicity here.
How to Start Fire with Water is the name of the book.
Yeah. So it's a very catchy book title because the catch is that if you're lost in the wilderness and you have to start a fire with water, you're dead. So you better read the book to find out a dozen ways to start a fire that are reliable, that could save your life in a bad situation. So we did that. I've been involved with a bunch of reality TV shows over the years. And those I do mostly for the cash. I enjoy that. And I've had a lot of fun with all of this. But my main goal, and I'm pretty sure it's similar to Boris's, is we love to save lives and prevent disasters. That's what we're all about.
Mm-hmm. So is it safe to say then that there is, and either one you can answer or both is, that there is a definite crossover between having bushcraft or backcountry skills and being prepared?
Absolutely.
Well,
go ahead.
I'll go first on that one. I've been dying to answer that question.
All righty.
Yes, there is, but yes, there's not. So let me explain that. So in the one sense, taking bushcrafting training and courses never hurts anybody because it's fun, it's a hobby, it's historical. You get yourself back to the land, and then you get to work with your dexterity and your hands and your brain, and you got to figure things out and learn how to adapt in situations. So none of that hurts when in a survival situation. The problem I see is a lot of people teach and take these kind of courses, but actually don't learn the most fundamental basic tactics to survive short-term disaster and situations where they're lost in the wilderness. So that's where I come from. I don't know about you, Boris.
I would say that would be my opinion as well, that most people are generally not going to go kind of on the extreme side, living off the land bushcrafting, right? And that's a skill set that knowing a little bit can actually get you hurt, because if you're relying on those skill sets in an emergency and you're like, well, I'm going to take flint and steel and make my fire and it's pouring rain, you know, but they're purists and they're like, no, this is bushcraft, I don't want a lighter and stuff like that. You're not doing yourself any favors. When we're looking at survival, it's just, what do I need to do to be alive at the end of this ordeal? And that you're looking at the priorities to do that, how to do that the most effective way. So on the urban side of things, if I take kind of bushcraft skills, they're good because they give you an understanding and an awareness of your environment and how to use your environment to save yourself. But the skill sets, unless you're really, really good at them, may not be enough to get you through that situation. And so, like David mentioned, it's great as a hobby or something like that. But if we're looking at it from the perspective of life saving in a backcountry setting, my suggestion would be to learn kind of modern wilderness survival techniques and have the capability and capacity to be able to put those into effect if things go sideways while you're doing your bushcraft walk or whatever, right? Or camping or hiking. To the multiplicity of skill sets and means to be able to save yourself is going to be far better than if you're relying on one means to light a fire or one means to make a shelter. The breadth of knowledge that you have will help you be able to manage those situations, as well as understanding what those requirements are, what the priorities are, and how to problem solve under those conditions where things aren't going to be ideal. So if you have someone and they go out and they're practicing their bushcraft skills, that's fantastic. Doing so under less than ideal environment, that's also going to be something they want to achieve. Because if you just go out there and it's like it's always a sunny, warm day, and yeah, I can do this bow drill and it's fantastic. I got this. Well, you're not going to be having problems in ideal conditions. It's going to end up being at night when it's cold, raining, and you're going to have a sprained ankle. So what do you do in that situation? So when I teach people from a disaster preparedness or even personal security stuff, it's always going to be something that's less than ideal that you're going to be dealing with as far as the situation. And so that's what we want to train for, is the problem solving and the thinking steps ahead so that you're geared up for those bad situations rather than everything's idyllic. Because when everything's ideal, you're not in an emergency, right? You want to simulate those situations as best as possible so that you can deal with them if they should occur.
Cool. What about your thoughts on that, Dave?
Well, he hit the nail right on the head. And for example, this past weekend, I had a group of students out in the bush in the Muskoka area, in a Crown land area. We always do things legally. We don't teach survival or bushcrafts and primitive skills in illegal places like provincial and national parks and conservation areas. We're seeing a lot of that going on now. I have to point that out. But anyway, on another note, the students had to spend the night building lean-tos and A-frames and testing their gear and finding out what they should have had instead of what they did carry. And it was interesting because we had a pretty cold weekend. And I allowed them to use their sleeping bags as a backup, and they all did. So in the morning, the first question I asked in the debriefing was, what if you didn't have a sleeping bag? What if disaster struck and all you had was a knife and a tin can and a flint or some basics, and you had to build a shelter and start a fire and get it going and warm yourself up and stay alive, but no -20 or -40 sleeping bag? Then what would happen? And they all said, boy, yeah, we'd be in serious trouble. So I think a big part of what I'm seeing today, too, is we're getting softer and softer and softer. A lot of people are getting extremely soft and can't take any kind of discomfort. So I'm seeing a movement towards teaching all these skills in nice, easy, cozy yurts and easy playgrounds versus taking people into some serious wilderness. And if they're going to learn a skill, then teach it to them when they're suffering a bit. Like if you're going to learn how to start a fire with a bow drill, okay, it's one thing when I demo that. I'll be at the adventure show too, and I'm going to do some seminars too, and I'm going to be demoing the fire bow, but that's going to be inside a nice warm building with no insects. I'm going to be well fed and had a Tim Hortons coffee and have nothing else on my mind by having fun and entertainment. Now you compare that to the 12,000 people on average every year across Canada who are lost in the wilderness. They don't have those luxuries. And now look at what goes on in Ontario. The number 1, 2, and 3 ways people die.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Whoop. Whoop. Well, I guess I give him instruction if this happened there, just to pop back in when he can. We'll get him back up on screen. But you have to forgive him, everybody. He, like I say, he is coming to you live via cell phone from his car on the side of a highway or on the side of a road. So he'll be back in.
But yeah, I guess to pick up on David's point, there is I guess a movement that people want to learn these skills, but they want to learn them sometimes in those sterile environments, and then they play with it. They get it once and they're like, okay, well, that's it. I got this. I got this in the bag, right? I can do this. And then they either don't practice it again and think, well, I've done this once or twice, so I know what I'm doing now. And it's always been in that sterile environment, those ideal environments. And they don't carry on building that skill set. And that leaves people with a real false sense of capability to do something. And then they'll go out, they'll go hiking, and they'll be like, yeah, I've got this in the bag. I don't have to worry about it. And then the next thing they know, they've had an issue, and now it's like time to put those skills into play, and they're not able to do it, or it becomes far more difficult for them under those circumstances than they envisioned it could be. And so, that kind of 7P thing, proper previous planning prevents piss poor performance, is a real good way to kind of look at it. Is that, are you ready for something bad happening? And that should be kind of at the forefront of your mind, rather than, oh yeah, everything's great, it's going to be a sunny day on Saturday, so I'll just take my water bottle and off I go. Instead of, a small backpack or something that isn't going to weigh you down, but it has some essentials if something happens. And that planning phase that goes into it, and it doesn't matter if it's for a day hike, or for expedition trekking, or on my end, if it's urban survival and personal protection stuff. We always want to look at, are we prepared for something to go wrong? And to what level do we want to take that preparedness? And do we have the skills, the wherewithal, capacity and capability to do so? And when I say capacity versus capability, they're sometimes used interchangeably, but they're not. Capability is, do you have the physical ability to do a given task? So if I say, do you have the capability to lift up that rock over there? Yes, you can go over and you can pick it up. But the other side is, do you have the capacity, psychologically and mentally prepared, to execute those tasks? So in survival, it's like the most important thing is your will to live, right? So if you are suddenly found in a place where you're cold, you're wet, it's in the dark, you're scared, and you have a broken ankle, and you're suddenly like, well, it's hopeless and I give up. The chances of you making it out of there are far less likely than if you are like, well, I'm in a pickle now, but I've prepared for this. I know how to make my situation better, and I'm going to start focusing on bettering my situation so that I can move on to the next sit and the next thing and the next thing to get out of here. And so when I teach counter custody and restraint escape, that's what it is. You may be in a situation where, we have you tied up with a bunch of different restraints, and the situation seems hopeless. But if you have the capacity, as well as the capability, and the mindset is right, and the will to live is there, you're just going to keep working at it and working, not giving up, to better your situation.
All right.
Anyways, welcome back, Dave.
Welcome back, David.
Oh, sorry about that.
Let me guess, your battery died, right?
No, actually, my cell phone amplifier booster was getting overheated, and so that shut my phone off. So it's amazing. I live off the grid a lot, and so using satellite technology and everything else, it's great for emergencies, but sometimes it doesn't always work perfectly.
Right. So now, what David, or sorry, Boris was just sort of adding to what you were speaking of. The one neat thing that I find about this whole bushcraft preparedness thing, it's not just about urban survival and if the shit hits the fan, what to do type of thing, but for those of us that are outdoors people and backcountry campers and canoers and hikers, we can actually utilize a lot of these skills in the backcountry, right? If you run into a big issue in the backcountry, you get stranded, your canoe ditches, and you happen to have whatever it might take, a ferro rod or what have you, a Bic lighter. Everybody wants to go to the ferro rod because it's a cool thing to do, and that's probably a last resort type of thing that you should probably want to use, right?
Yeah, and it's a good point. Sorry, where I cut off, I was going to get into that. Okay. But one of the things that you want to consider is the rule of threes and the most important physiological needs to survive. So obviously in a survival situation, building a shelter, starting a fire, getting water, those three things are the most important things. You could stay alive for a long time. So if you can have a ferro rod and know how to start a fire, well, that's great. But what we teach is I carry a ferro rod, I carry a magnesium rod, I carry waterproof, stormproof type matches, I carry a butane lighter, I carry 5 types of fuel cubes. Just like today, where my ExploreNet satellite failed and everything else failed, and I had to go and find a backup to the backup, and here I am. You better have 10 of everything. And but then there comes a question: how much do you carry, and what size is the gear, and so forth and so forth. But if you ask the search and rescue, they'll tell you what happens. People freeze to death. And as I mentioned, in Ontario, the highest cause of death is ATVing, snowmobiling, and boating. So with any of those activities, you can go a long way and you can go really fast. And then one of the problems with a lot of these activities is alcohol and drugs. So when we were at the Sportsman Show, we had the sergeant for OPP searchers. He was up with us, and he was giving a lot of good on all of this. But yeah, ferro rod, if it's in the right hands, is a fantastic tool. And that knowledge of a bushcrafter and how to find their tinder, kindling, and fuel wood makes a lot of sense. But if you have no idea, like millions of people buy these things, and then in a bad situation, they have no clue what to do with it.
Right. Yeah. I see more people use a ferro rod incorrectly. You know, you get a little scraper that's got the little divot out of the end, right? They're trying to light it with that there. And yeah, they got to learn how to use these things, right?
Well, and we actually teach to carry things that can make it easy to do that. Like using, for example, cotton balls or diapers are great. You can start a fire with diapers and pet urine pads because they're full of cotton. Often people have stuff on them. Like I've interviewed literally thousands of victims. I've worked with different, search and rescue groups and the authorities, and we've seen all this stuff happen where people are lost. Oh, I can't start a fire, but then they have some fleece clothing. That's good for fire starting. Shred a bit of that out of there. Or if they're wearing blue jeans, there's plenty of cotton stuff inside their pockets. Or maybe they were carrying some chapstick or some hand sanitizer. Oh boy, when everybody was running out of toilet paper, which by the way starts a fire too, the hand sanitizer is extremely flammable. And I always have like 300 jars of hand sanitizer, not because it's of any use for COVID, because it's actually pretty useless for COVID, but it's actually great for fire starting. So you got me on another good topic there with ferro rods.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So let's talk about that then. Let's talk about things that you can use or you should have in your preparedness kit that also double as your good backcountry bushcrafty type of equipment. First thing that comes to my mind is basically any of your camping equipment that you take.
Well, to me, there's a fine line not only between bushcraft and survival preparedness, but also between camping and survival kit and survival gear or bug out pack. And so, yeah, if you have the right camping gear, I always like to start with a really good sleeping bag. That's the main thing. And then comes a tent. But when it comes to your survival gear, that's the stuff you can carry on you when you go for a hike or you go hunting or fishing, or if you go, just for a day's paddle, your canoe or kayak or SUP. So to me, they kind of overlap. But in a situation of life and death, I'm really happy to have all my camping gear: my sleeping bag, tent, my portable stove, my water filter, my extra tarp, and large saw. But maybe all I have in my pocket in a bad, desperate situation is my knife, a tin can, and a ferro rod. Those three things would be my key elements of any survival kit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, tin can could go a long way, right? You have you have a container, right? If that tin can happens to be full, you got food too, maybe, right?
Well, and for boiling water, because again, you need fire, shelter, and water. Because the rule of threes is pretty straightforward. You can survive for 3 weeks without food, although I could probably survive longer because I got an extra 20 pounds of body fat. Boris, I don't know. He's kind of thin over there, so
donuts got to pack on some more pounds.
He might be cooking me up if things get really bad. But anyway, you can survive for 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, maybe 3 hours if you become body temperature compromised, like hypothermia or heat exhaustion. And then if you have no oxygen, that's why people drown. A lot of fatalities in boating. is you might only last for 3 minutes. So understanding that, but also, and I think Boris will attest to this because in his line of urban and tactical and self-defense, there's a lot of other factors that, end in a good outcome where someone lives versus dying. It's not just their survival gear. It's not just their good clothing and layers and woolens and waterproofing and all of that. But there, you got to say there's a lot to do with skills, experience, health, fitness. Oh, there's a whole ton of factors. So you got to weigh it all together and make some sense of it. Now, having said all that, personally, I think the wilderness is much safer than being on Highway 401 and in your car. The studies will show that more people are going to die in their vehicles than ever out in the wilderness. You're not likely to be eaten by a bear, but you are likely to crash your car on the way up, or have a health issue. Predisposed health issues are a big one. People don't even go for a physical checkup once a year, and then they head out on a remote trail, and then you don't have to imagine too far as to what can go on. So, like I said, I could talk here for 6 hours. Hopefully, I don't cut out anymore. But yeah.
Cool. So let's talk more about the gear then. Like, what should you have on you, say for instance, at any given time, whether you're at home or in your car or in the backcountry?
Well, I would say my book. Okay,
there we go.
Again, very selfless publicity. But on the last page of the book, I left the pages blank so people can use it as emergency toilet paper or tinder to start the fire. But now, all joking aside, because over 12,000 people are lost across Canada, and there are quite a few fatalities, the most basic essentials that people should carry with them would be a ferro rod or some waterproof matches or a lighter and different ways to start a fire. Now, I just happen to have in my car a big ferro rod. This is like the giant one for the championships. And this thing weighs a ton, and it's completely stupid to carry something that big when you can buy a nice small compact one and a little magnesium stick that'll do the same job. But I got a big ego, so sometimes I have to carry this kind of stuff. And then the next thing I would say would be a knife and or a folding or some type of a saw for cutting down materials for your firewood. And well, not so much for the firewood, but for building a shelter. Because with firewood, you don't actually have to chop anything down. You can just feed your wood into the fire or burn it in half. There's lots of ways to not waste calories. So start with fire starting equipment, then something for shelter. So really crucial things you could have in your survival pack in the wilderness would be a small tarp. Something not too small though, like I like an 8x10 or something like that, or maybe some garbage bags, maybe a little bit of rope and duct tape. And one of my favorite items for shelter building is a solar or space blanket that can reflect heat. And if you build a good shelter, you can line your shelter with it to actually reflect the fire, or even wrap yourself in one and heat up stones to stay alive. So these are a lot of real life things you can do to stay alive and then be rescued. And then after that, once you get past the shelter and the fire implements in your survival pack, then I go towards water purification, because I don't want to get Giardia or E. coli or I've had all these things over the years, and it's no fun when you get that. Everybody around you dies because it's like a cloud of gas from the diarrhea and everything. Dysentery. It's the most horrible thing you can imagine. So the tin can is really good for boiling water. If you boil your water 3 or 4 minutes in a rolling, bubbling boil at the altitude we are here in Southern Ontario, then that should kill off any live pathogens. And then after that, in my kit, I'll carry iodine, chlorine tablets, and maybe even a little mini filter like a Sawyer or a Life Straw type mechanism. But keep in mind, some of those filters, they freeze up. So a lot of people buy them and they have no clue what to do with them, and then they're frozen and they're useless. But I like having lots of stuff for purifying water, because I don't want to end up with tainted water. And then once you get past that, I'm looking at food supplies, high energy foods like granola bars, trail mix, soup mixes, jerky. But more so, I prefer things high in fat and oil and carbohydrates. And then we get to making yourself visible. and getting rescued. So I should have pointed out right from the start, probably the most important things you can carry, and I actually have them here in the car, is I actually have right here, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, is a tracking device. So maybe before you actually think of the ferro rod and the shelter items and the water purification, how about let's prevent ourselves from being in a bad situation where we can contact the authorities with a satellite tracker, like an InReach or a SpotX, and then you could get yourself rescued. Even better, I have in my car right here, I'll just pull this out. See, I got everything. I'm always prepared.
There you go. Yeah.
Although the only thing I'm missing here is Boris. So that way, if I get attacked by zombies, he can help me out there. But anyway, that's a satellite phone. And that I can call out anywhere in emergency situations. And then what I'm using right now, believe it or not, I'm actually using a cell phone amplifier booster. It's called a Wilson's WeBoost, and there are many different models and manufacturers for that. I'm not promoting anybody here today, but for $150 you can buy a cell phone booster that'll amplify your cell phone signal by 40 times. If I don't have that right where I am right now, my signal is going to cut out eventually because I'm in a spotty area. And then if I'm in a place where I don't get any cell phone coverage and I can't even call 911 or use that new app that's called What 3 Words. That app's great, but it only works if you have cell phone coverage. So then I'm going to rely on my satellite tracking device or my satellite phone or other methods. You could get a ham radio, but that's a whole other story. So I like communication equipment. And then something I didn't point out yet is also navigation equipment. So here we go. I got in the car a GPS unit. I like the, I don't know if I'm allowed to say names of companies here, but
sure you can. Yep.
I'll just say I'm a big fan of the Garmin 66 and Garmin 64 models. This is the Oregon. I like the Garmin's because you can download topo maps that are in 3D. And also for all those people who are trespassing on property, which they shouldn't be doing bushcrafting, they should be on Crown land. I have software here called Trek Maps that shows you Crown lands while you're actually there. Shows you where you are if you're on Crown land or standing on national park property. You know, so I like having a lot of communication and navigational equipment, but nothing beats an old-fashioned compass. So a good old Silva Ranger or Sunto MC2 compass. And some things I'm hearing right now about GPS are kind of making me worried. I've always said you should never go into the backcountry without a physical compass, a manual compass, and actual maps, like physical paper maps. And I'm hearing that with what's going on in the world right now, GPS could go down. You never know. And that could happen quick. So all kinds of stuff. The other part of the GPS is you need batteries, and sometimes they fail, this and that. So those are some things. Then we can go into a whole list of 100 different things you could consider. Everything from a deck of cards to some snare wire, some fishing line and hooks. I actually have a little slingshot in my pack. And then more and more and more stuff. Again, I want to reiterate. Shelter, fire, water, signaling, food, first aid, navigation, and communications. And I think if I talk to the OPP, which I do sometimes, a search and rescue, because I ran some courses for them up in Aurelia, one comment I got from some of the officers is that they sometimes search for bushcrafters who never were taught how to use a compass. So just something to consider. If you're going to learn bushcraft skills, learn a few survival skills too, or combine the two. Because I love bushcrafting, don't get me wrong. Anyway, I'll let you ask me more questions on that. It's a controversial topic.
Touching on that part about having the map and compass is, yes, you definitely you could have a compass, but you have to know how to use a compass.
Well, yes.
Know how to set declination and all that different stuff, right? And with that comes skill set. And with that, usually would include instruction, right? So, have somebody that is well-versed in it, give you instruction on it, and actually walk you through it. Because just to hear how to use it sometimes is not as easy as it is to use it.
It isn't easy.
Yeah.
Not only that, sorry to cut you off there, but you got me another point there, is that millions of people buy these GPSs, and actually with handheld GPS for the outdoors, it does require a little bit of knowledge of some of the basics of compasses and maps. So when you learn how to use a compass, then you have to know what magnetic and true north and grid north is. And when you learn how to use maps, you get to learn all the symbols and that. But sometimes a person will buy a GPS and have no clue what to do with it. And I even caught people setting it for the wrong hemisphere, and they're wondering why the GPS says you got 5,000 kilometers to go. And now another point. Now here's a key one. If anyone gets a tip tonight, this is the big one. Automobile GPSs are the one that cause thousands of people getting lost in all over North America every year, because that's different. A handheld unit, you can't go too far wrong. You program a go-to from A to B and it goes. You know, not much else can happen. But when you plug in an address or a lat long into your car GPS system, this happens very frequently, where people end up going down a back road or an unmaintained road. Heck, I had people come to Marble Lake Lodge from Toronto, and they said it took 8 hours to get there. And I asked them, how did that happen? They said, we're not sure. I think we used Google and MapQuest, and they saw signs that said snowmobile trail. I said, snowmobile trail? Did you question that? Was a red flag hitting you? And no, because you know why? We're all suffering from this nowadays to some degree. It's called nature deficit disease. I don't want to steal Richard Louve's book. That's a great book he wrote on that topic. Last Child in the Wilds. But nature deficit disorder or disease, whatever you want to call it, shows that too much reliance on social media and technology results in a lack of common sense, logic, decision making, and risk taking capability. And now we're seeing that in survival. When I bring students out there now, compared to the students I used to get 30 years ago, I threw them in the bush. I didn't care if they died. I hate to say it. We were really nasty. And I remember when Survivor Man Les Stroud, he took his first course. I was his first instructor. I think he almost died a couple times, you know. That's why he can survive through anything. But nowadays, because of insurance and liability, we're extra careful, and people are so soft with the nature deficit disorder. They'll watch some of these shows and they think they know how to do it, especially the younger bucks. They say, oh, I watch Man vs. Wild, so I know what to do. Yeah, right. Nothing takes the place of practice and skill. And I would say, Boris, sorry, I got to let you talk for a while, but you know, I'm pretty sure you can't teach self-defense, you know, just in theory. They got to actually throw them on the mat and see what happens when they writhe in agony.
You're exactly right, David. And I mean, I worked with a guy once who we were down near the Welland Canal in the Niagara region, and I was leading him elsewhere from where we were meeting, and I said, okay, follow me. And I pull out right, and he goes left, and I stop, and I turn around, and I say, what are you doing? Why are you going that way? He's like, no, the GPS is telling me to go this way. So he's staring at the GPS driving forward until he looks up and slams on his brakes, and he's about a foot away from the fence that's keeping him from driving into the canal, because the street continues on the other side, except the GPS said just go this way instead of seeing this, like the actual canal in the way. And I said, no, we have to go around. We have to go 3 streets down across the bridge and then come back to the other side of the street that we're looking at. And he was so insistent that the GPS was right that he didn't actually think about it on his own. So, you know, that to David's point, there's a lot of that. And there's a lot of, you know, people see something on TV and they'll be like, okay, well, you know, like I said, would practice it in their garage or something. Oh, I got this. I saw it on TV, or I watched it on YouTube, and now I know how to do it. And the opposite is true. There's a real false sense of capability there and skill set when they haven't actually experienced it. So, you know, yeah, if we're teaching self-defense, so one of my partners that we deliver training together. So Ace from Delta to Alpha Design, you can check them out. He's a wizard in the defensive tactics and the combative side of things. And you know, unless someone's like punched you in the face, you're not really going to understand what that feels like and how it impacts your ability to do things. So same goes with being able to operate under pressure. And these skills are not usually going to be brought to bear and put out there under ideal conditions. It's always going to end up being used when things are bad. So when we deal with combative side of things, we have to assume that you're not going to be in your best state. You're not going to be dealing with one person. It's going to be one or more. It's going to be in the dark. You're going to be outnumbered. You're going to be stronger than you or faster than you. So we have to make those assumptions in advance. So the same thing goes with being out in the wilderness. We're going to have to assume that the conditions are going to be the worst that they can possibly be. And then we have to plan for that. In going from a preparedness side of what Dave is carrying with him out when he goes for a walk or for a hike or for an expedition, we have to look at the scale of weight versus what the likelihood is of something bad going on, and to what level do we need to mitigate that. So when I go out in the wilderness, I wear kind of my first line gear of stuff that's small, effective, and I know how to use them because I practiced with them, and that stuff stays on me. So it's either around my neck, in my pockets, on my belt, what have you. So if I fall in a river or something like that, that stuff's still going to be on me, even if I lose my pack and everything else. Then I look at what my secondary thing is. So is that going to be like the small backpack that I'm carrying? So it duplicates everything I have on my first line gear, and then it's a little bit extra. So to back up what I have and, maybe more full size or full capability. And then third, it's like, well, on my car camping or something like that, well, my car can carry a whole lot more than I can. So I can put a third set of full survival gear. So, a full wool blanket, full, sleeping bag, whatever it is, to be able to meet those survival priorities, being shelter, water, fire, etc. And depending on the situation, we want to look at things like communications, like Dave talks about, like protection, possibly. If you're in an area that's very prone to bears and whatnot, you might want to carry some means of protection. So like whether it's a firearm or a flare launcher or something like that, or bear spray, what works for you given that circumstance is probably going to be something that you want to consider, right? So when I approach things on the urban side of things, the book that I've written, hey Dave, I got one too. Yes, so our disaster preparedness guide that I wrote, now in its second edition, is it's based on the principles of preparedness and survival. So the same survival principles that we're talking about for the wilderness, you still need shelter, you still need water, you still need fire, you still need communications and protection, et cetera, et cetera. And those principles have to be addressed one way or the other. So when we're looking at an urban environment, as long as you can meet those needs, you better your chances of making it out of that situation. So when we talk about shelter, in the wilderness, we're looking at shelter from the elements. Well, most of us in an urban environment or suburban environment have that already taken care of for the most part. You live in a house or a condo or a basement. So generally speaking, that survival need has already been taken care of. The question is, how do we get those other things in there? So this book came from a lot of questions being, how do I prepare myself for the lights to go out? And I live in a condo, and there's a lot of condos in Toronto. And so when that question was posed to me, it's like, well, I can't say to them, well, you need to learn wilderness survival skills, because they live in a concrete box in the sky. Now, there's some realities that go with some condo buildings, is that what happens when the power goes out? They can't go up and down their elevator, so they got to go up and down the stairs only. If you live on like 18th floor or something like that, that sucks. Okay, so are you physically fit and capable of doing that several times a day? These are considerations that you have to think about. Without power, do you have water in your apartment at that point? Because if the pumps in that building aren't working because there's no power, how are you getting water up to your condo or your apartment? That becomes a consideration now, because if that ice storm lasts for 3 or 4 days, you're going to run out of water pretty soon from the 3 bottles that are in your closet. So how do we deal with that? So, pre-positioning some supplies, or, do you have a balcony? Are you able to create some kind of catchment system that can collect rainwater or something like that, or melt snow? So these are considerations to start working on in advance. the principle is the same. Whether you're out in the wilderness or you're out in the city, you still have the same survival priorities. You still need shelter, you still need warmth, you still need food, you still need water, you still need protection, whether it's from a bear or it's the human animal, right? These are considerations that are they're fundamental principles for it. So, when we look at fire, so same thing, you're in a condo, power's out, so is your heat. And now it's -20 outside and you're going to start losing heat very, very quickly. And how do we deal with that? Well, do they have a barbecue? We don't want them bringing it inside and dealing with, carbon monoxide poisoning and stuff like that. But do we have to go out and buy a whole lot of camping gear to be able to, have sleeping bags and stuff like that? Maybe, maybe not. Most people have blankets in their house, right? And you should be able to repurpose or double purpose the stuff you already have. And if you're able to start stacking the ability of your stuff and to be gear, you should be able to start ticking those boxes off, right? So in your pantry, do you have a couple of metal cans, full of food and stuff like that? Like Dave was saying, high energy foods that can be prepared simply. Again, you're in a condo, power's out, more than likely your stove isn't working anymore. But if we go to something like the kids stove that you were mentioning, which is a fantastic product, by the way, I do mention it in my book as a wonderful little backup. I own one. Actually, I think I own two, and they're great little stick stoves. They work very well. But you can take that, put it on your balcony with a little, it's like small fire starters or what have you, or a couple of sticks. You can go down those stairs, go across the street, pick up some sticks and bring them back. You can cook a can of food, right? And you can do so safely on your balcony. And these are considerations. They're not. My book isn't prescriptive in the way that some books are. It focuses on the principles and being able to adapt those principles to the situation that you're in, because not everybody's going to have the same living situation. Not everybody's going to have the same budget. Not everybody's going to have the same know-how or access to products. But what they can do is find a way to check off those tick boxes so that their shelter is taken care of, their water situation is taken care of, that, do they put extra jugs in under their bed or something like that, and rotate it through the year? Or, do they have a catchment system? Do they have a rain barrel and a life straw or something like that? These are all different ways to achieve the same objective. And so then fire. Okay, how do we stay warm? Well, do you have a portable heater, right? We look at light and electricity. Do you have like a small battery pack, like a Goal Zero or something like that, right? And stringing that up doesn't necessarily have to be glamorous, but it can be effective. I was out of town, I guess just in the new year, and we had a power outage for like 2 days, and I had got myself a small little Goal Zero power pack and a couple of 12-volt LED lights to go with it. Power went out. All right, great. Broke out the little box that I have of, little accessories and stuff like that, along with the power pack, strung up the lights, and we had light. I had a wood stove, so I actually cooked food on top of the wood stove. So my regular electric stove didn't work. So got the fire going. I had shelter because I'm in a house. I had heat and light. I had food, so I just ended up cooking it on top of the wood stove. Took a little longer, wasn't as glamorous, but it did the job. So when we're looking at those kinds of considerations, we want to look at what the end goal is, and that's to be able to make it through that situation as unscathed as possible. But on the same side, it doesn't have to be like you have to own this knife, you have to own this generator, you have to own that, because that's just someone endorsing a product rather than endorsing the final result that they're looking for. Again, everybody's situation is going to be different, but the principles remain the same, whether you're out in the wilderness or you're out in the city. So, you know, some of the stuff that I look at from an urban perspective, when I'm, you know, saying, well, the things that I carry out in the world, they're not glamorous, but they prepare me for what I'm thinking is going to be the biggest problems that I'm going to encounter on the streets. Generally speaking, violence is what you're looking at from a human element. The first thing you want to carry with you is situational awareness. Having the ability to be aware of your environment is going to be paramount in identifying threats and taking steps to avoid them. Getting into a fight with somebody or into a violent confrontation is rolling the die that you will be successful in that confrontation. You don't know anything about that other party. You don't know if they're carrying a weapon. You don't know if they have friends. You don't know what their situation is. Are they on drugs or whatever? Are they mentally disturbed? All these sorts of things. And you're then thinking, well, I'm macho. I'm going to take them on. You know, the guy looked at me weird, and I'm going to engage them. That's folly. In my opinion, we want to be able to identify, behaviors that don't fit in the norm, so that we can identify them and take action to put ourselves in a position that we're not going to be as affected by it. When we get into the kind of things where avoidance is not possible and we're put in a position where someone is actually aggressing us, we don't want to get into a fight with them. A fight is two people willingly wanting to get into a conflict with one another. We want nothing to do with that. So when Ace from Delta to Alpha and I put on workshops, we want to cause damage to that person so that they can no longer pursue us in their intent. So we want to open a window so that we can get away. Not looking at, there's going to be a fight, we're going to roll around on the ground, all that sort of thing. It's blast and get away. That's the goal. Mm-hmm. And then when we get into the further things, it's what am I looking at as far as things going really badly? And I look at it in two ways. One, that I'm the victim of some kind of forcible confinement or an abduction. So I want to look at how I can self-rescue from restraints. So in doing so, I'll carry various gear on me. So it's all really kind of small, but this is called a SAD tool. It's designed to open handcuffs and zip ties. On here, I got a handcuff shim and a handcuff key, and we have other things like where to go.
For those of you that don't know, Boris is also a part-time magician, right? So
yeah. So here's it's called a V cutter. It's used to cut through non-metallic restraints. This is Technora cordage as well as Kevlar cordage. These we use to cut through non-metal restraints, and they are designed for that task. We also have the other side of it. In an urban environment, everything that you might need in an emergency is available to you in an urban environment. Everything. The only trick is that most of the time those supplies are going to be behind a locked door, okay, or a cage or something like that. When we're talking, so to understand the proper context of what I'm saying is that when I teach covert entry stuff or non-destructive entry, we don't teach it in the sense that we're looking to teach people how to break the law. That's not it. If you want to break into a place, you can just throw a rock through the window type thing. But what we teach is non-destructive entry. Yeah, exactly. But also for an emergency situation, being able to open a locked door, a locked cage, a locked receptacle, to be able to access something that is life-saving. So medication, medical equipment, being able to get out of a bad situation. So like safety is on the other side of this door, but danger is over here. If I can open that door and get myself or other people through it, and that's going to save lives or better our chances of not being aggressed or victimized, then I'm going to err on those circumstances to get me through and get over there. So when we look at that, that's one of the reasons the skill sets are there. Also, it's an incredible skill set to train your mind to think dynamically and to solve puzzles. But locks are they're engineering puzzles, essentially what they are, right? You have to achieve a certain combination so that the puzzle will open, right? So that's why you have cuts and keys. They're coded numerically to certain depths so that they will align the pins inside to allow you to turn the lock and open the door. So what you're doing is decoding that puzzle with tools. So
I've seen Boris do it, and he's pretty good.
Well, thank you. So for instance, like one of the tools that we sell and we use, it's called the CAMPX tool. So it's a variation of the kind of original OSS tool from World War II. This one, I made modifications of the design, and lockpicktools.com has built it for us. So that's so it's got a few different lockpick tools. We have the turning tool here, and then it also has a stainless steel hacksaw. And for the size of it, it packs quite a punch for the ability to do stuff. And I've used it to help people who've been locked out of their cars, out of their homes, locked stuff in their desks, all kinds of stuff where I've been able to help people, legitimately help them, and it's a good skill set to have, and it can be used in so many ways, but ultimately it's to be able to help people in crisis. So, someone needs Ventolin and it's locked in that cabinet. Well, am I going to sit there and let the person die, or am I going to open it and deal with that later after saving that person? Right. So
are these tools you actually carry with yourself on a daily basis?
Yeah. So or a selection of which, I mean, keeping, the CAMPX tool, fits very easily. In Ontario, it's legal to carry. There are legality issues in certain provinces with it for carrying it, whether you're licensed as a locksmith or not. But in Ontario, that there is no regulatory body or legislative framework for that. Like the commentary that comes up. Yeah, it is. It absolutely is. I've been challenged several times, and David can attest to this, having been at a lot of the shows with him, where people who are police officers and just members of the public are like, why are you teaching people to be criminals? And I'm always like, well, I ain't teaching anybody to be a criminal. If they're a criminal, they were a criminal before I'm going to be teaching them. And if they're shady, I don't want to teach them. I teach people who want to be better at keeping themselves and their families and their businesses safe. And I'm showing people how criminals do bad things so that they can be more aware of what they have to protect against, right? Because showing people criminal methodologies is the best way to protect yourself from criminal methodologies.
Mm-hmm. I've always said locks are for honest people anyways.
They are. And if someone's going to break in your house, they're going to use a crowbar or a screwdriver or a rock to smash the window that's right next to your door. They're not going to be picking your lock. Generally, there's very, very uncommon for that to be a method of attack, unless the people doing it are far more sophisticated than your common criminal, and in which case you will have been targeted by them, and they will have planned that out with far more precision than somebody who's just looking to steal your TV. So it comes down to what's reasonable, and so we try and give people as much knowledge about not only the criminal methodologies, but the limitations of common security apparatus like locks and such, and how they can make informed decisions to better that situation for themselves. And it goes beyond just lock picks and lock bypassing. It's everything to do with construction, to lighting, to the way that your house is laid out and your yard and stuff like that. And there's things that we talk about in those security assessments, so that people can make those better decisions for themselves. And it also helps them when they travel as well into different places, going back to things like having the situational awareness of, am I in a bad area, things to look out for, and ways to take steps to better your situation when you're out and about.
Right. I want to take a little step back there, because back where we were talking about fires and cooking and using fire for warmth and stuff when you're in a survival situation, or maybe not a survival situation at the time, because it could be but we'll use the scenario of, say, a power outage. I read your book. Okay. For those of you in the chat, I've got links down in the description there of how you can actually contact Boris and David to pick up a copy of their book. But this book is it's not very big, but it's packed full of information. And when I read this, and I was reading the scenario about, you do have some scenarios in there and stuff, but the one about, fires and stuff like that. And I started thinking to myself, if we had a power outage here at home, and and like you gave an example, you were out of power for 2 days, type of deal. What would I have to get me by for cooking food? So I started thinking, well, first off, we have natural gas that doesn't usually go out. For heat, we have it doesn't usually go out, right? We also have a gas fireplace, which is going to give us some warmth if it's a cold season. But I was also starting to think, okay, for other cooking, and I'll let David have his piece here because he's shaking his head no. But I started thinking about all the apparatuses I have for cooking. Okay, I have a barbecue outside. I have, numerous propane tanks. I have, Coleman stoves. I have the twig stoves. I have little camping gas stoves with fuel. Like, I realize I have enough to get me through quite the pinch if we needed to, right? So maybe everybody in the chat should think about just something like that. What would you have to get by if you had a situation? The things to get you out of a pickle. David, you're shaking your head no.
Well, some things you have sound good. Like, if you use your barbecue outside, that's pretty good.
Yes.
The fire department, what they've told me, because I like talking to experts. Like, I base most of my courses and training and everything I wrote in my book, not just on my mind, but in, partnership and getting details and studies from others. And what they say is a lot of times in blackouts, for example, people start fires with too many candles. And actually, if you have 100 candles on, that could cause a carbon monoxide issue. So something as simple as having a battery-powered carbon monoxide detector and a battery-powered smoke detector, because nowadays most people have them wired in. But back to your heating and cooking and all that. A lot of people say, well, I have a natural gas furnace, so I don't have to worry. Or a propane gas furnace or heater. Actually, almost all of them require electronic ignition, so good luck. You'll be without heating. So what you'd have to do is install an inlet on your house or dwelling where you can directly hook up a backup generator or power packs or battery inverters, so it goes right to your electrical panel, so you can keep the most important things in a bad situation would be keeping your heating going, so that would be a big one. Now, with natural gas fireplaces, the old-fashioned ones that have the pilot light, they'll work without any hydro at all. But a lot of the new ones, I would say majority, don't have the pilot light anymore. They're electronic, so they don't work either. So you're again out. You're out of luck. So if you ask me, for heating, people should start with a good -20, -30 sleeping bag and wool blankets like Hudson Bay style or military style. Start with that. Because it don't matter. Like, let's say everything else failed, you can still stay warm and get a good night's rest. People should probably, this has nothing to do with heating, but is have a porta potty or something. Because the older I get, I need a washroom. The most simple thing is if you're in a high rise. Now, Boris, you mentioned high rises. I would say in any disaster, get the heck out of there. I would evacuate. I think high rises are one of the most dangerous environments to be in a prolonged blackout or disaster. Like if it's only for a day or so, maybe. But trying to get help up there, trying to get medics up there, you have no heating, no hydro, no water, no toilet, nothing. So anyway, at my off the grid property, I have what I always teach is have either have a wood stove or maybe a pellet stove, because in some urban areas you can't have wood stoves. So a pellet stove could be a good backup, and have an inlet so you could plug in your generator, or instead of going with an inlet, go with a backup full-time purpose-built generator system like the Generac style. That way it just turns on, and they can run on propane, diesel, or gasoline. At my off the grid property, I have a good solar systems. I built them myself on the cheap. And so that could be another alternative, but generally solar doesn't provide you a lot of heat and cooking. It just takes too much wattage. So the wood stove, the pellet stove, and then the propane furnace, propane heaters, but make sure anything propane is properly vented outside. Never have propane heaters indoors without proper ventilation. So, I mean, I could go on and on about all of this. I also have bio toilets, so they don't require any water. They're waterless, and a whole bunch of other stuff for water purification. You can invest in a ultraviolet system, or just old-fashioned boiling and adding chlorine and iodine. So a backup to the backup. But again, in an urban environment, which I'm quite knowledgeable about because I lived 20 years in Toronto, but I could never live there again. Sorry, I hate to say it, but I'm spoiled rotten.
I couldn't
so
do it either.
Good for you, Boris. I would get out of there.
Yeah.
I would evacuate. I'm sorry. There's a lot of look what's going on. I don't want to bring up Ukraine right now because that's another show. But if you want to see people surviving, if you want to see what's going on there, people are cooking their meals on a campfire outside in front of their old apartment building that's been destroyed. They're hiding in basements. They're having to melt snow and finding rainwater and everything else. So there's a lot to know, and we got a short time tonight. But I think take Boris's courses. That's what I totally would recommend to anybody.
For sure, for sure. You know what, gentlemen? It's 20 after 8, and around 8 o'clock, I usually like to do a quick swag giveaway. So I'm just going to take a quick little break. If either you have to, use the side of the road or the men's room or grab yourself a beverage, feel free to do so. I'm just going to drop you in the basement for a quick minute there. I'm going to take care of a quick
and I got
and then
some
we'll have you
swag
back up
for
on
your
screen.
viewers.
Yeah.
What's
that?
I can offer some swag.
Oh, okay. Well, what have you got? Let's hear what you got, and then I'll also mention what I've got.
Roadkill.
The
first 20 viewers that email you can get a free copy of my digital survival book.
Okay. Well, let's do it this way. I'm gonna have. I usually do the giveaway will be where people will send me an email, and they have until Saturday basically to get involved. And I will give it away in that fashion. How's that?
Sounds good.
Okay, I'm just going to get this one across the bottom here on the ticker. Basically, what I have is I have 2 sets of passes for the Toronto Outdoor Adventure Show. You don't have to do anything except for drop me an email, say, please enter me, and I will put you into the drawing. You have until Saturday, April 23rd at 11:59 p.m. to get yourself entered. At that time, I'll do a draw, and I'll notify the winner by email. Your prize will be actually will be waiting for you at the will call booth at the show. So we'll do it in that fashion. I will also give away copies of David's ebook, right? Digital book.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to do 20 copies?
Yeah, because the more people who are prepared, the better it is. Yeah.
Can I get one of them? I never did pick up one of your books. I wish I had them at the show. I like reading that type of stuff, so I'll have to pick up a copy myself.
For you, I'll send you a hard copy. How's that sound? We actually sold 15,000 copies of it. Yeah,
15,000. So that's got to be like a bestsellers type of thing now, right?
It would have been in Canada, but it was an American publisher.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Unfortunately, but anyway.
Awesome.
And Dennis, I'll add my ebook to Dave's for those 20 as well.
Okay, so we'll get wow. So somebody's going to have a lot of reading. Like I say, this book very well written. It's straight and to the point, and it's funny because you through what you've been saying tonight so far, you've mentioned the 7 Ps and stuff like that, right? I caught all that. The rule of threes. I caught all that too. Yeah, so all that stuff you'll read about in the book here. So there you have it, everybody. I'll leave that ticker going across the bottom. And you know what? Yeah, get yourselves entered, and I'll get some prizes out to people. Just really quick, if you can attend the Toronto Outdoor Adventure Show, okay, please put that in the comment of the email. I'd like to give that prize to somebody who can actually use the tickets at the show. I don't want to give it to somebody that can't because they're not in the area. So if you can make it to the show, please put that in the email. Okay, you know what? Let's get back into topic here. I wanted to talk about maybe going through a couple of different scenarios where, you know, I mentioned the power outage. You could have ice storms. You can have Boris attests to it in here as a little joke with an LOL about the zombie apocalypse. You know, let's pick one scenario and talk about how the bushcraft and the survival preparedness can actually meet. Let's maybe take an ice storm. Who wants to start with that?
You know what? I'll jump in because Dave started one of the previous ones off. I think realistically, the second you step out of your city, right, out of the grid of a city and the city limits, you are now in a situation where you're far more reliant on the wilderness survival skills than you are on the urban. Sure, vast majority of people live in a city, but a lot of the people that go out, they're unprepared for having to rely on themselves rather than relying on the systems that the city has built. So, you know, when we talk, like when I teach stuff and we're talking about, you know, response times in downtown and, you know, considerations for things, we're looking at what the systems are and what the supports that you'll have because you're in a city, right? There will be hydro crews trying to restore power. There will be city crews salting roads and clearing storm drains and all that sort of stuff. Police, fire, emergency services are going to be doing their best to, you know, to attend to people's calls. But once you get out of that city limit, those systems are barely there. Okay. And by that, I mean, like for the GTA, once you get outside of Oshawa, you're in the sticks, right? Like it's, and the farther away you go, the less and less of a response you're going to be able to get. And the more and more you're going to have to rely on yourself. And that self-reliance becomes a real problem for a lot of people who think, well, I have my cell phone and I'm in my car. What could go wrong? If something does happen, I'll just call and my problems will be solved. But as some people out Sarnia way found out a couple of years ago, they got stuck in a snowstorm on the highway and ended up dying in their vehicles. So they were calling for help, but help couldn't get to them. And they had not taken some steps to have stuff with them in that eventuality. And anytime you are in a place that's prone to snowstorms and it's winter, you should have survival gear in your vehicle. So even though I live in the city in the winter, and later this week I'll be changing, I have an appointment to change my tires over from winter to all seasons, but it's like we had snow yesterday, so what the hell. But in the winter I carry stuff in my car anyways, regardless of the fact that I'm right downtown, and I could almost walk home regardless of the situation, because I'm not just considering what the eventualities might be for me, but what happens if I'm traversing the highway or something like that in the winter and someone I see has gone off the road and now they need help, you know? So I'm not just trying to set myself up for success and self-rescue for myself. I'm also trying to be capable of doing that for somebody else. So if they need help, I'm able to do it rather than just driving past and being like, oh, it sucks for them that they're freezing to death in their car. I'll just carry on, right? So having things like flares, a flashlight, a wool blanket, right? Jumper cables. How many people do you know don't have jumper cables in their car? And for me, that's kind of mind blowing because I've been approached by so many people in the city, in the parking lot, and they're like, hey, my car won't start. Can I get a jump? And it's like, okay, great. Do you have jumper cables? Well, no. I'm like, well, good thing I've got them, right? And I'll give you a boost, but like you're lucky, right? And they'll say, well, I've asked 6 people and nobody has jumper cables. And I'm just like, these are things that you should have in your vehicle, amongst others, that are going to help you get through those kind of common eventualities. So when we're looking at a snowstorm or an ice storm, those bushcraft skills and those bushcraft preparations of having that shelter, having an extra blanket, having a sleeping bag in my home, having the means to make fire and to create a heat source in my home, to have lighting, sanitation. Like, so, Dave was talking about going to the bathroom in a powerless condo. Your closet there, you can get one of those 5-gallon pails or whatever that, like a Home Depot bucket or whatever, and you can line it with a garbage bag. And there's your not so fancy but adequate toilet that's actually going to work. And as you fill those bags up, you can drop them on your balcony or whatever. Yeah, again, not glamorous, but it does the job. And versus your neighbors who are going to be using their cooking pot, if at all, right? So it achieves the objective, and it's not very expensive. It's common stuff that you can use anyways, because that bucket might be able to give you, the means to whatever, wash your floors or something like that. They're always useful in some way. Even a garbage can that's sturdy enough for you to sit on will do the job, right? Line it with some bags and get the job done. So these sorts of considerations from the bushcraft world and from then into the wilderness survival world transfer into the urban environment as well. And it goes the same way, the opposite way as well. The primary thing I try and get people to tune in on is awareness, situational awareness, being aware of your environment, and to what level is that environment going to impact you. Bringing that skill set of being aware into a bushcraft environment, into the wilderness, is going to give you a tip off for things that can harm you, like animal scat that shouldn't be there or that you don't want to be around, water levels and water speeds and stuff like that of bodies of water that you want to steer clear of. Okay, things like changing weather patterns, right? If you're not paying attention, a storm can really roll in on you pretty quickly, and if you haven't caught on to that and set up your shelter knowing that it's coming, or get back to your starting point and into your vehicle, you can be caught out there, and now you're in a bad position trying to set that up to deal with that. So awareness and being in tune with your environment is really important to be able to identify hazards and threats so that you can start mitigating them, taking action. If you just sit there and wait for things to happen to you, you are at the mercy of those things, versus taking proactive action to try and put yourself on better footing right off the get-go. Mm-hmm. So those skills are transferable regardless of the environment, but they're incredibly important to have, your finger on the pulse of what's going on around you. Once you've gone through a lot of wilderness stuff and been in different terrains, you'll start to get in tune with this is okay, this is a good situation, and now something's going sideways, or it's getting dark pretty quickly. Maybe I should start taking some steps instead of thinking I'm going to be able to you can share your litter box with your cat. That's an option. I don't want to scoop it though. You can start to better your situation before it gets really bad. And I think that's a very important piece of the puzzle, is that you carry the equipment with you, but if you don't have the wherewithal to use it at the appropriate time and in the appropriate way to set yourself up for success, you're going to be behind the eight ball.
For sure. Just a really quick note here. I posted the link in the chat there. If anybody would like to join on panel here to ask a quick question of Boris or David, feel free to do so. All I ask is that when you join the chat, that you please mute your YouTube volume so that we don't get that big feedback echo. Hope a couple of you will come on up and join us and ask a question. Really quick comment here too by Venture Creek is asking, his comment is, luck is governed by how prepared you are to handle a given situation. Don't just think you're gonna, and we attested to this earlier, don't just think that you're gonna see it on YouTube or on TV and you're gonna know what you're doing. Get out there and practice some of this stuff. You know, if you see a skill, try to master it, right? You learn by doing, right?
Yeah. Hope is not a plan.
Hope is not a plan, right? Yeah. So David, with a scenario like a bushcraft scenario for some sort of disaster, can you give us a specific scenario that you might favor? Does that make sense?
Trying to figure out where you're going with that. So,
well, like I had mentioned earlier about, say for instance, an ice storm. Some bushcraft skills that might come in handy during an ice storm. Well, and we'll assume that we're locked in the house pretty much.
Well, I think, look, people who are outdoor adventurers, outdoor pursuiters, bushcrafters, survivalists, by their very nature, they're going to have a lot better preparedness than your average person. Like probably anybody who camps has sleeping bags, has wool blankets, has portable camp stove to cook their food in the backyard somewhere. You know, has other means of, if they run out of toilet paper, maybe they've learned that the mullein leaves out in the backyard make a good substitute, or the old corn on the cobs that the pioneers used to use. So the bushcrafter tends to be more creative and adapts. And because they're used to it, they've been out in the woods, they know, you know, that they don't have fancy fridges and toilets and everything else out there. They got to find a way to provide heat, water, shelter. So that's all adaptable. Like, on the one hand, I always think that it's a positive aspect if you're a bushcrafter. So if you've learned those skills, it's not going to hurt or hinder your survival in an urban environment. The only thing is that if you're going out into a wilderness situation and you have bushcraft skills, but no survival skills, none of the basic preparedness, how to use a compass, how to communicate, how to build a shelter, that kind of thing, how not to get lost. That's the big one. I mean, you look, 12,000 people are lost every year throughout Canada. Why do you think they're lost? Because 99.99% of them don't carry a compass or a map or anything, let alone GPS. So yeah, the two are pretty heavily connected. But in a real survival situation, making ropes and baskets and arrowheads and spears and atlatls are not going to be the most immediate thing you need to do. You need a shelter, you need a fire, and you need water. I know I've honed in on this 100 times, and how many times I've taught this. I go to preppers conferences. There was a preppers conference I was at a few years ago where I was pointing out, okay, wool and fleece and clothing, and then we start talking about, oh, I carry a big knife and a small knife. That's good enough. A chopping knife and either a Swiss or a multi-tool. One guy says, oh, I have 100 knives. And I go, 100 knives? Maybe you want to invest in better clothing, because the guy was wearing all cotton, miserable looking footwear. And I thought, then you saw what happened down in Texas when they had that big winter blast and their hydro plants failed. I heard reports people were shooting at the snow so it would retreat. And people were freezing to death in their own homes because they never thought of a wood stove or sleeping bags, wool blankets, you know, a source of water. You know, how many people know their water tank at home? Okay, last resort, fill the bathtub and you have your hot water tank too. At least there's a source of water, you know. So there's a lot of factors. But I think the one thing I got to point out here is I don't like using the word expert. I'm not an expert. We're all human. We make mistakes. We do the best we can. We're fragile. We all have skin and bones and blood. And so we're all prone to making mistakes and not being prepared. I've had situations happen where I thought I knew it all. Next thing I knew, I was reduced down to nothing. So just pointing that out. But yeah, it doesn't
absolutely agree with you on that, Dave.
It doesn't hurt to be a bushcraft.
No. Yeah, I echo that sentiment. I've had people introduce me or something like that and say, well, he's an expert in, and I'm just like, no, not an expert. This is something I specialize in, yes, but I'm by no means an expert. In my mind, an expert is someone who has all the answers, and I don't. I'll be the first to admit it. I'm constantly learning, constantly trying to better my skill sets, and learning from others, because I won't know everything. Somebody else will know more than me, and there's always going to be someone that's better or knows more or has more experience than me, and all I can do is hope that I can learn something from them and add to what I already know. So I'm not by any means an expert. I specialize in the stuff that I do, and probably know more than the average Joe, but by no means do I have all the answers. And that's why when I teach stuff, I really put that preamble out there that this is, what I teach is the start of someone's journey, and it's not the end all be all. They should learn more and more to have a better chance of doing that.
We're spreading awareness is what we're doing, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Really quick there, Christian, thanks for joining us on panel here. Did you have a question for one of the boys?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for the wonderful show, Dennis, Boris, and David. David, I don't know if you remember me from quite a number of years ago on Bruce's property when we did the survival meet with Che and everybody.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so nice to see you again. Hopefully we'll see you in a weekend or so, in a week or so at the show. My question is when it comes to a disaster, when say disaster does strike, usually most people go through the first time, the first period is they're stuck at home, they don't know what to do, they stay in. So at what point in time would you feel is it necessary to decide between continuing to bug in or when it's time to bug out?
Oh, I love that question. That's the best question. I was at another preppers meet conference one time, and there were instructors there teaching bugging out, how to make a bug out pack. And I was the only one who raised my hand, and I said, what if you have no experience? Does bugging out make any sense at all? Probably not. You got to know how to bug out. It's much more complicated than just the gear you stash in a backpack and we're hoping to know how to use it on the fly. It takes practice. You got to know where to bug out. Have you scoped out all your locations? Preferably, if you're in a high rise, you got an RV or some cabin up north you can get the heck out to. So I think, and back to your question, the answer would be it's going to depend on your level of preparedness, your skill, experience, and it's also going to depend on the situation, because every situation is different. During an ice storm that happened in Toronto a few years back, a lot of people were unaware that they actually had municipal recreation centers all set up for disasters, complete with beds, food, everything. So you may want to start with getting to know where you can actually bug out safely. So that would be a tip right there. So bugging out is not always the answer. I think, to me, if you're prepared to know what you're doing, and if the situation is now, like Boris said, situational awareness, if it looks very desperate where you are and dangerous, maybe bugging out makes the most sense. But I think in a lot of cases, staying put probably is the answer.
So, and I'll give you my 2 cents on it. So, echoing some of what Dave just said, it's good. The situation will dictate, but bugging out is taking everything you have and going mobile, which means if you're in a house in a city or whatever, generally speaking, you can better pre-position a lot of supplies and a lot of resources to help you get through a situation a lot longer. The second you go mobile, you're leaving a lot of that behind, and you're putting yourself in a position where mobility can break down. You have far more considerations with things like a vehicle. What happens when your vehicle breaks down? Now what do you do? Well, you're going to leave the vehicle behind with all its stuff and only what you can carry on your back. are you fit enough to actually go and continue your journey to its ultimate destination laden with what you barely are able to take with you? And as you move forward through that and that consideration, you're now losing a lot of those supplies that you've said that you're going to take with you. And unless you get into some really elaborate planning, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. So, you know, if there's like complete civil unrest and they're burning houses down and stuff like that, of course, you're looking at the dynamic of the situation and what is more valuable, getting away and going mobile versus staying put. But aside from the situation will dictate, which I apologize, that's a bit of a cop-out answer, but it is ultimately the answer. But I do think that you could better weather most storms staying in with supplies and material and things that you've pre-positioned to deal with that situation than taking off and leaving it all behind, right? How much better does your home shelter you versus your car versus you on foot, right? How much water can your house hold in jugs and food on shelves versus your car versus your backpack, right? So those are considerations. Is like things have to be pretty bad if you are going to pull up stakes and get moving on the road. And then you won't be the only one. Now you're going to be fighting for road space with people. You're going to be like, did you plan out your routes? Getting out of the city is not going to be so easy. So these sorts of things are real considerations that you should have. And
that comes to the situational awareness, like getting out when you realize things are getting bad before the panic hits. Mm-hmm. So like in that situation with the burning houses and riots and looting, you start to pay, if you're paying attention to the news and you're paying attention to what's going on, it's like, I'm going to get out before the other 100,000 people in my area decide to do the exact same thing.
That's right, and that turns into your ability to have your finger on the pulse for that, as well as what your appetite for risk and stuff are. And those are very personal things. So I mean, you can start looking at them. And it's like, at what stage do I actually go? Versus, you know, when I do go, what am I taking with me, and am I able to do that? So there's a lot of planning that goes into going mobile. I would suggest that you focus on actually getting your home or wherever you're living set up for a long stay versus going mobile. That would be a secondary consideration, in my opinion.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, David.
Cool. Yeah, I would say Boris hit it right on the nail, because I think bugging out is the most risky. It has to be like a last resort, life-threatening situation to bug out, and you better know how to use all that bug out gear, and you better have the right bug out gear. Like, do you really want to bug out? Let's say if you're in the city and you want to bug out to some valley or river or forest or whatever, you know, are you prepared to spend the night there and build a lean-to, or do you have a nice -20 sleeping bag that you can toss under a bivvy and get a good night's sleep? You know, so and then with all the other zombies all fighting over everything, that's a whole other story. I don't want to get into it too much on this show, but let's suffice it to say that you know, it could get ugly in the big cities, and actually the authorities, I hate to say, I presented for some of the municipalities after that big ice storm hit Toronto, because it was such a disaster. So many people were not prepared for anything, and they were blaming the governments. But you know what? The governments can't possibly get you ready for all of this. We don't have the infrastructure or the gross national product to pay for every possible, you know, outcome that could happen in disaster. Matter of fact, recently I contacted all 3 levels of government to find out if we even have any nuclear shelters left here in Ontario. And the answer was they don't know. So I'm hoping the Leafs get the Stanley Cup first, you know, before anything bad happens. I don't want anything bad like that to happen, because I like my way of life. I like my Nespresso coffee once in a while, and a pizza. And actually, when I go back tonight, it's my wife's birthday. We're gonna have a nice big Black Forest cake. You know, all of this disaster stuff sometimes gets you depressed. But on the other hand, it's good to be ready. A prudent person has that, you know, gear in the back of the trunk of their car, at the RV, at the cottage, in their house, in their condo, when they go camping, when they go hunting, ATVing, whatever, and then go from there. Let's hope nothing bad happens.
Yeah.
Really quick, I'd like to throw this comment here by Wolfman there from Barefoot Bushcraft. He says, remember, everyone, the government has a think tank and they already have an idea where you will try to go. Almost everyone says go north, but the north is prepared. They don't want us all. That's very true, right? Yeah, run away from the problem as far as you can go. Let's go north, and it's like they don't want you up there, and that was evident with COVID, right? They closed everything off. They didn't want people traveling to the north. They didn't want things spreading up to an area that might not be as largely affected as it has been down in our area, down in southern Ontario, right? But but how true is that? And you know what? I never really thought of it that way. Thanks, Wolfman. That's good food for thought. Yeah.
Hey, Wolfman. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
There you go. So, Christian, I've got another guest in the basement there that has a question.
Perfect.
And, did you have anything else that you'd like to get across to the boys here?
No, just cheers everybody in the chat, and we'll keep on going.
Thanks. I see you often in the chat. I appreciate your support there, watching the channel.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
You're welcome, man. We'll talk soon.
All right. So we got Ingo Hetzer here from Kid Products. You know this guy, Boris?
Yes, I do. Makes some amazing products. How's it going, Ingo? Good to see you.
Not bad. How about yourselves?
Good.
Pretty good.
Doing all right.
Good. Well, I must say, everybody should have one. David didn't want to get into the fact that people can get ugly, but that's exactly what I want. Boris, reading your book, you have some numbers in there. When do things get ugly in an urban setting?
So there have been studies done since Hurricane Katrina and other disasters, especially in the U.S. So the projections are after 96 hours, there's a breakdown in kind of societal order. Food, if we shut off the taps and if we stop the trucks from arriving, you're looking at about 96 hours until there's nothing left on the shelves. Water has stopped flowing. There's no more food. There's no more fuel, nothing. And the societal kind of sheen has broken down. And there's studies done by the American Trucking Association years back where they actually came up to that. They took a kind of a temperature of that situation and said, well, if all the trucks just stopped right now, what would that take for kind of society to start coming apart? And that's the estimated number that they came up with. There was a period of where people are like, oh, this is okay because, you know, we have stuff in our houses. Like when we had the big power outage here in 2001, you know, it was in the summer, so it wasn't a big deal. People were barbecuing out in the streets and whatever, and it was generally a peaceful time. But what happens if that power didn't get restored? What happens if that was in the middle of winter and then you start going past that to when people have run out of the food that was in their freezer that has started going spoiled, and now they can't feed their kids anymore and the shelves are bare? So it becomes a far bigger problem, and now you're dealing with human elements as well as lack of resources. So it can be really really bad, and we've seen that in Katrina and in other disaster areas around the world.
And 96 hours is not a heck of a lot.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
You know, so bugging out becomes essential somewhere along the line, because I don't think you want to sit in the apartment with a shotgun fending off people that are hungry, right?
No.
Well, therein lies like the different considerations, right? Like we're going, you know, what is the actual event, and is it going to start impacting, you know, the societal kind of fabric and stuff like that, and then does safety and security become more important than shelter, you know, and that sort of thing, and those survival priorities start to change. So depending on the situation, again, the situation will dictate, but is it more, is it safer for you to go mobile at that point, and only the situation?
Yeah, I found it very interesting that it was only 96 hours after, well, power outage. Of course, you know, trucks are stopping because the refrigeration in the stores are not working anymore, that kind of stuff. So that can happen pretty quick. I found interesting in your book also that you said if you have friends living outside in the north or in the south, wherever, to make arrangements, right? If things happen down here, ice storm, maybe just across the border or southwest, wherever, they don't have that problem, make arrangements that you visit them maybe for a couple of weeks.
We're all going to hang out at David's place.
Apparently he's got cake.
Well, the only problem is I'm gonna need Boris to be part of it, because he'll be the guy to fend off the zombies. Now, a lot of people don't even think about 96 hours. You know how many of us need meds? I've been diabetic since I was 18. So what's going to happen after 96 hours? You can see what's going on in the war in Europe right now. That's happening. Actually, lots of people are dying. They can't get their meds. And on and on and on it goes. And I didn't want to get too gory tonight because it can get downright ugly. Like, what could possibly happen? Maybe I'm going to cook some of you guys up. I don't know what will happen. But I hope I never have to get to that point. But I think we've hit some good nails. Like bugging out, it has to be extreme and really desperate to get away. And maybe have a plan. You should have a plan in your home. What are you going to do? Does everybody rehearse the plan? And do you have a place to bug out? Can you get away? Like, I remember there was a big power outage years back when I used to live in Toronto, and I just went to a motel. I got away. I didn't want to be anywhere near all of that, and that was safe enough for a few days up north. And but some of these points, we don't have all the answers here, because a lot of things can happen where I've got a nuclear bunker and 5 years of food, 10 years of toilet paper, 3 years worth of coffee. But what if I'm at the Outdoor Adventure Show when disaster strikes? Actually, 1 year there was a power outage at the show. And I think our booth was the only one who had power because we had backup power packs. And I remember 1 year at the Sportsman Show, the conservation M&R guys locked themselves out of their own RV, and guess who opened it up for them? Boris. And then I had a ShamWow guy 1 year. He injured himself seriously, and I had a first aid pack. I had to treat him at an RV show. So you never know when disaster and things happen. Hopefully it never happens, but the smart person is prepared. And I like your stick stoves. I have one too, and those things are excellent backup. You never know when you might actually have to use one.
Yeah.
Just
everybody should have one.
Just use it for fun. I'm gonna pop a question up here on screen. Very interesting. Brian Jay's asking. He says he's read that white gas common fuel that has been left out in old stoves and then working fairly well after years, which has made him consider that a stable fuel option. Agree? Yes or no? Is white gas a stable fuel option?
Well, if you for any old gas, you should have some fuel stabilizer. Because if you have old gas and you put it into anything, like, God help you, if you put old gas in a generator, people leave the gas in a generator for 2 years, you can destroy the generator. Same with any piece of equipment, right? But you can actually rehabilitate old gas if you have fuel stabilizer and a few additives at some point. Like, if it's too old, you best to get rid of it.
Yeah.
I've never known that, because white gas. What is it actually a filtered gas, or what makes white gas white gas? Anybody?
I have no idea.
I just use naphtha gas. That's all I use. And cooking stoves or anything like this. I don't use anything else.
Well, that's what naphtha is white gas, right? So
yeah,
very interesting. Did you have any other questions for the boys here, Ingo?
Thank you very much.
Cool. Well, you know what? Looking forward to seeing you at the Toronto Outdoor Adventure Show. Going to be fun hanging out with you and the other boys and kid products for the whole weekend. So it should be.
Oh yeah, it's going to be good.
Awesome.
Anyway, you guys have a nice evening.
Thanks, Ingo. Alrighty, guys. Well, you know what? We're 4 minutes to 9 o'clock. I think we covered quite a bit here. As you mentioned, you could probably go on for hours and hours discussing where bushcraft and preparedness meet. I think if people want more information, they should actually try to pick up a copy of your books or win one. But I think they should pick up a hard copy to support the cause, right? So, Boris, can you tell people where they might find information on you? Oh, sorry, you're breaking up there. I got no volume. Let's start with David. We'll let David start with that.
All right, so you can get go to my website. That'll be the fastest way. WSC Survival School.com. WSCSurvivalSchool.com, and you'll get linked to 2 other websites.
Absolutely. So you can check out our Instagram feed at True North.
I think Boris is having a few technical issues.
You got me now.
Both David's and Boris's information is in the description below, so you can go on there to check out their websites, as well as Boris's got Instagram. So does David, and you can follow him there. You got volume now, Boris? No, something's lagging there big time. But anyways, I just want to say, fellas, thank you very much for joining us tonight. It was a fun conversation. Hopefully all the viewers took something out of this. Get out there and brush up on your bushcraft skills, and keep yourself protected when it comes to anything that might happen in the unwanted event or catastrophe, right? So safeguard yourselves. There's all kinds of things that you can do. Watch your videos, read these books, learn a little bit more, and like I said, safeguard yourselves. Gentlemen, thanks very much for joining. Just going to drop you both into the basement in the green room, and I will finish off with you there while I finish closing up the show.
Thanks very much. Thanks, everybody. Stay crafty.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dennis. You run a good show. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it. So I'll be with you guys in the green room in just a moment.
Thanks.
All right, everybody. Hopefully everybody enjoyed tonight's show. Once again, just wanted to thank everybody for sticking with us here at Canoe Hounds Outdoor Adventure Show. 101 episodes. This one is here. We're only 99 away from a big 200th show celebration. So hopefully you stick with us. If you haven't already done so, please do hit that thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet and you're into this type of content, all kinds of backcountry and outdoorsy stuff, by all means, please do hit that thumbs up and hit the bell notification. You'll be notified when our shows are happening, which are every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're willing to find out what we have coming up in the future, keep an eye on Canoe Hounds Outdoor Adventure Show on Facebook. That's where we post everything, all the links to different things coming up. And you'll know exactly what's going on with the show and things of that sort. If I can't make a week, I always put the announcement on there and stuff like that. So that's all good. Once again, for tonight's swag giveaway, if you can drop an email to canoehound@gmail.com. And if you can make it to the Toronto Outdoor Adventure Show, please do put that in the email so that I know that you can use the tickets. Otherwise, please do still enter, because we have a whole bunch of copies, e-copies of How to Start Fire with Water by David Arama, and Boris's book, the Disaster Preparedness Guide, which is a very good read. So by all means, please do support these guys. They've put a lot of work into writing this and doing all the research that needs to happen for it. And yeah, it's always a good thing. Anyways, I look forward to seeing you all next week. Hope everybody has a great week. And remember, please do keep the adventures alive.